Hi, my name's Odalyn. And if you've ever sat in a room full of your own blood, but felt like the furniture mattered more than you, then maybe you'll understand what I felt that night. I brought a brand new iPhone, $850, wrapped it myself, smiled as my niece opened it. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Mom and Grandma said if you disappeared, no one would even care." Then she giggled. No one corrected her. No one flinched, not even my mother. So I left. No yelling, no goodbye, just one black backpack left behind on the stairs. But what was inside it wasn't just receipts. It was proof, and the quiet beginning of the end. Before we dive in, what time are you listening to this, and where from? Drop a comment below. This one might feel too familiar. The sky over Savannah still held a touch of gold as I pulled into my mother's driveway. The front lawn buzzed with voices and laughter. Cars lined both sides of the street more than I expected. I'd been told it was just a quiet family dinner. Nothing fancy. I smoothed down the blouse I'd ironed that morning, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. Neat, simple, presentable. In one hand, I held a gift-wrapped box, an iPhone I'd been making payments on for the last 6 weeks. In the other, a bottle of sparkling apple cider. Leora didn't drink, and neither did I. I thought it might be a nice touch. The door was already open. People were inside. Voices overlapped. Chairs scraped floors. Silverware clinked. No one came to greet me. I stepped in and stood there for a moment, letting my eyes adjust to the light. Familiar faces swept past me like I was wallpaper. Callista's voice rang out from the back. "She's here!" she called, not even looking up from her phone. Not Adeline, not my sister, just she. I placed the cider on the kitchen counter, careful not to get in Vera's way. My mother stirred something on the stove with the grace of a woman who pretended she hadn't seen me. I smiled. "Need a hand?" She didn't answer. She just pointed with her elbow toward the dining room. "They're all in there." So I walked in. Balloons dangled from the ceiling. "Congratulations," Leora was strung in gold letters over the mantel. A massive sheet cake sat proudly on the table. "To our brightest star, Leora GPA Queen." GPA Queen. I blinked, searching for context. Was this a party for her grades? I'd been told we were gathering to honor someone's promotion. No one said who. For a second, I thought maybe they meant me. I'd just completed a certification course. Nothing grand, but enough to warrant a dinner. I thought wrong. "Auntie O!" Leora squealed, already tearing into another gift. "You actually made it!" Several heads turned at that. One cousin even muttered, "Didn't think she'd show." I forced a smile. "Wouldn't miss it." I placed the phone wrapped carefully, ribbon and all, on the pile of gifts, right next to a pair of brand new sneakers and a spa voucher. Callista glanced at it and raised a brow. "That from you?" she asked. I nodded. She tilted her head. "Didn't peg you for iPhone money." My mouth dried. It's for Leora. She's been wanting one." "She's 13, Callista said flatly, already walking away. The music turned up. Someone offered me punch. I declined. I was still trying to make sense of the room, the noise, the sheer number of people I didn't recognize. The gift pile dwindled, and soon Leora reached mine. She tore it open like it was just another box. No pause, no card read aloud. When she saw what it was, her eyes widened. "An iPhone!" she squealed. "From Aunt O!" Then she giggled, and I swear I saw it coming before she even said it. "Mom and Grandma said if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even care." The room froze for a second. One beat, two, then laughter. Laughter rolled through the space like thunder. Callista choked on her wine. Vera gave a half-hearted, "Leora!" But she was smirking. A cousin said, "That's cold." But he didn't stop grinning. And me, I smiled, the kind of smile you wear when you don't know where else to look. I looked at Leora. Her fingers tapped across the phone screen, already distracted. "Thanks for the phone," she said, barely glancing up. I nodded. "Of course, sweetheart." I couldn't feel my hands. The air in the room thickened. I looked around. No one was looking at me. No one was coming to stand beside me. I stood alone, clutching the edge of the table like it might float me away. I thought about that phone about the night I ordered it online, checking 3 different sites for the best deal, about how I took on extra shifts last month, about how I skipped buying myself a coat this winter so I could keep up with the payments. I thought about the weekends I watched Leora while Callista drove to Florida for mental resets, the time I helped her with a science project while Callista was out, and now this a punchline. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat and turned toward the kitchen. "I'll check on the cider," I said to no one in particular. Vera was standing at the stove, swirling sauce in a pot. She didn't look up. I leaned in. "Did you hear what Leora said?" She paused just for a second. "She's a child," she replied. "Don't take everything so seriously." "She didn't make it up," I said quietly, still stirring. "Don't start something tonight, Odalyn." I stepped back. The wall clock ticked louder than the laughter behind me. In the hallway, I reached for my purse. I didn't even put my coat on, just grabbed my keys and walked. I passed the cake on the table, untouched candles being lit, cheers rising, but I was already at the door. I didn't slam it. I just let it close behind me like I'd never belonged there anyway. I walked to the car without glancing back. There was no dramatic exit, no slamming of doors, or shouted truths, just the soft thud of wood meeting frame behind me, quiet enough to be mistaken for the wind. My keys felt colder than usual in my palm as I slid behind the wheel. I didn't turn the radio on, didn't call anyone. The streets of Savannah were near empty at that hour, just a few porch lights flickering like lighthouses in the distance, and the occasional bark of a dog behind a wooden fence. The kind of silence that makes every thought louder than it should be. Halfway down Montgomery Street, my phone buzzed in the console cup. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. At the red light, I checked it. One message from Mom. "You left. Cake's just getting cut. No, are you okay?" No sorry about what Leora said. Just cake. I set the phone face down. The light turned green. I didn't remember the drive home clearly, only that when I parked in front of my apartment building, I stayed inside the car a moment longer than usual. The warmth from the vents faded, leaving behind the kind of chill that doesn't come from weather. Upstairs, I didn't take off my shoes, didn't change out of my clothes. I dropped my purse on the couch and walked straight to the hallway closet. It was still there, the old black backpack, the one I'd lugged around for most of college and 2 years after that. Through interviews, bus rides, and more job rejections than I cared to count. I hadn't used it in ages, but I kept it because something about it still felt like me. I pulled it down, brushed off a thin film of dust, then stood there thinking. Not about the insult, not even about the laugh, but about every single moment before that when they didn't say anything, yet everything hurt. Like the Thanksgiving dinner, when I brought a homemade pie, and Callista said store-bought would have been better. Or when Mom whispered at Christmas loud enough for me to hear, "She's not really one of us, you know. She just tags along." Or that time, God, how could I forget when I walked into the living room during Easter brunch and overheard Callista say, "She's useful, but honestly, she's never been one of us." Useful. The word stuck to my ribs. That night, I became something else. Not useful, not invisible, something harder. I opened the backpack, but I didn't fill it with clothes. From my drawer, I pulled out the folder I never planned to share. Receipts for groceries I bought when Callista forgot her wallet. Screenshots of Venmo requests from Mom. "Can you cover the power bill again? Your uncle's surgery. Just a little help." Statements from years of paying off credit cards they opened in my name. Each one folded, stacked carefully inside. Then the emails, the ones asking me to book flights, cover hotel stays, fund emergency ballet classes, weekend camps, birthday dinners. I printed them all. And finally the USB. It had sat untouched in the back of my drawer for 5 years. A tiny stick with a purple band. I didn't even remember why I'd saved that clip, only that one afternoon, Leora had been playing with my camera, and I'd hit record. She was 8 then. In the video, she looked up from a coloring book and said, "Do you like my second mom? Mommy's always tired, but you always make time." My breath caught. I paused the frame, her little face frozen in mid-laugh, like a memory trying to stay alive. I tucked the USB into the side pocket of the bag, zipped it, then turned back to the door. The drive back to Mom's was shorter than it should have been. Or maybe I just didn't think. My hands moved on instinct, my body steady while my mind burned. The house glowed from inside warm golden light, spilling through the kitchen window. I didn't knock. I knew where the back door was. I knew how to move in that house without being seen. I'd done it my whole life. They were singing when I stepped in. "Happy birthday to you!" Their voices rose in chorus as Leora giggled over the cake, holding a sparkler like a trophy. No one noticed me again. I walked past the mudroom down the hallway and set the backpack against the base of the stairs. Not hidden, not center stage, just there, a truth resting quietly waiting. As I pulled the door shut behind me, laughter burst through the walls again, louder now. It spilled out the windows into the night air, echoing in a way that made me wonder if it had ever stopped. I drove home slowly. Back inside, I peeled off my clothes and stepped into the shower, let the water hit my back like a steady rhythm. Not scalding, not cold, just enough to remind me I was still here. When I got out, my phone had lit up again. 6 missed calls. 2 from Mom. 3 from Callista. 1 from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't check the messages, didn't scroll, didn't reply. I placed the phone screen down on the nightstand, then slipped the towel off my shoulders. My skin was damp, my face wetter. Maybe from the water, maybe from the silence. The pounding came before the sun fully cracked through the blinds. I blinked myself awake, disoriented at first, thinking it was part of a dream. But it kept going, relentless, rhythmical, like someone hammering at the edge of my skull. I rolled over slowly, heart dragging like wet laundry. The thuds grew sharper. I didn't need to guess who it was. The footsteps, the voice behind the fists, the way the air shifted around that kind of anger. I knew. I padded quietly across the floor, careful not to trip on the corner of the rug. My apartment still smelled like last night's lemon soap and something old. I peeked through the peephole. Dad red in the face, breath visible in the cool spring morning. His hand balled into a fist, now pressed flat against the door. For a split second, he looked tired. But then, "You think you can just do this?" He bellowed, voice muffled but heavy. "You think we need you?" I said nothing. "You hear me, Odalyn? You think we need you?" His breath fogged the wood. "We've never needed you. We did just fine before you got involved in everything." Still silent. "You're ungrateful. You hear me after everything your mother did for you." My mouth tightened. "You've always been the difficult one, always playing the victim." He pounded again. 2 quick, angry slaps to the door with his open palm. "You're selfish. You've always been unstable, Odalyn. You need help." I blinked. My hand rested on the lock, not turning it, just feeling the cold metal. I wasn't crying, not from sadness, but there was a heat in my chest, like pressure from too many years of swallowing my own name. Eventually, his voice faded. His footsteps retreated. The hallway fell back into a hush so thick it rang louder than all the yelling. I stood there for a while, forehead resting against the door, and then I walked away. By the time I made coffee, my phone had exploded. A message from Mom. "How could you do this to your own family? No greeting, no hesitation, just accusation. 6 missed calls from Callista. All within the last 15 minutes. The 7th came in while I stared at the screen. Then the text. "You think we can't live without you? Fine. See how long you last without a family." I tossed the phone onto the couch and took a long sip of black coffee. It was bitter. No sugar, no cream, but it felt honest. I spent the next hour staring at the ceiling. The house didn't feel like home, but for the first time, it felt like mine. Later that afternoon, the digital alert started. Ping, ping, ping. My bank's fraud system flagged a suspicious login attempt on one of the shared accounts. Then came the notification, automatic withdrawal denied. Account frozen. Another email internet service account closed due to non-payment. Venmo access restricted. Netflix logged out. I sat at the kitchen table, legs tucked under me, like I was back in college, and opened a private browser. Checked everything. The joint utilities I'd been paying for gone. The auto debits I'd been covering for their cell phones, subscriptions, food deliveries, disabled all of them. They must have tried logging in that morning. Must have panicked. Leora, I was sure, would be in tears without her shows. Vera wouldn't be able to post her daily Facebook updates without Wi-Fi. And Callista, she'd lose her mind without her Spotify yoga playlists. I didn't smile, but something inside me exhaled, not out of satisfaction, but from release. A valve opening for the first time in years. They called me selfish, but they never once stopped to ask how many nights I'd gone without, so they could have more. The coffee had gone cold. I opened Facebook on my laptop. There she was, Callista. New profile photo, her and Mom, cheek to cheek, both in pearls, both smiling like nothing had ever touched them. Caption: sometimes family turns on you without reason, but we stay strong. We've always done this on our own. I kept reading. You don't get to choose your blood, one comment read. You're so brave. Keep shining, another said. Dozens of hearts and hug emojis lined the page. I stared at the post for a long time, each like and comment carving into my ribs. They really think they can rewrite it all, I whispered. I closed the tab. My feet moved without thinking. Back to my desk drawer. I pulled out the yellow folder marked 2017. The receipts, the emails, the transfer confirmations, the tax records showing my name on every donation, every payment, every lifeline they'd ever used, but never acknowledged. It was all there. For a moment, I thought about posting it. Just one screenshot, one simple fact, to interrupt the fairy tale they'd crafted. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the copier in the building's shared lounge, made 3 copies, slipped one into an envelope, wrote the date on the back. Then, I took the elevator down to the first floor. The safety box room was quiet. I signed the log, opened the tiny door, and slid the envelope inside. When I returned to my apartment, the sun had lowered behind the neighbor's roof. Everything was bathed in gold, like the world had decided to be soft for a moment. I poured myself another cup of coffee this time, with milk. I sat down, tucked my legs beneath me again, and looked at the phone. I didn't pick it up, didn't scroll, didn't need to. They thought cutting me out was punishment, but they forgot I built the house they're trying to burn down. The breeze outside had started to soften as afternoon settled in. I had planned to head down the block to the corner market, just to get some air, maybe pick up eggs I didn't really need, but I only made it a few feet out of my door before I saw it. A single white envelope taped just below the peephole. No postage, no address, just 4 words scrawled across it in my mother's perfect schoolteacher cursive. Read it before you do anything you regret. I didn't pick it up right away. I stood there, arms slack at my sides, grocery list forgotten. Then, as if someone else had reached out for me, I peeled it free, turned back inside, and locked the door behind me. I sat down at the table with it still sealed. 10 full minutes passed before I touched the flap. I kept telling myself, it's a trap, but something about the way she wrote my name, or didn't, made me curious. Inside were 2 things. 1, a single sheet of paper, printed not handwritten like I expected. 2, a photo-color printout. Leora's face filled the frame, wet with tears. Her lower lip caught between her teeth. I looked at the note again. I don't know what we did to deserve this. You were always distant, but you were still family. Think of Leora. Don't punish the child for what you think adults did wrong. Mom who still raised you, no matter what you believe. My fingers went cold around the paper. No matter what you believe. There it was, again, gaslighting disguised as grace. I sat back in my chair, the photograph still face up beside me. Leora looked heartbroken, but I couldn't tell if it was from not getting what she wanted, or from being told she couldn't expect it anymore. And suddenly, I was 9 again, looking through the crack of a door I wasn't meant to be behind. It was Christmas Eve. I'd been sent upstairs early, told that the grown-ups needed to wrap the magic, whatever that meant. I wasn't tired. I had crept back down barefoot and pressed my ear to the hallway wall just outside the kitchen. Callista's voice had been shrill annoyed. I don't remember what she was complaining about, probably some cheap perfume I'd picked out for her with my allowance, but I remember what Vera whispered in reply. I remember every syllable. She was born in the wrong house. If it weren't for your dad's guilt, she wouldn't even be here. I remember freezing like the air got sucked out of the vent above my head. I stood there holding onto the wall like it might fall in on me. I remember going back to bed, crawling under the covers, and staring at the colored Christmas lights blinking on the ceiling. And I remember thinking, what did I do wrong by being born? It wasn't the first time I'd overheard things I wasn't supposed to, but it was the first time I believed them. Now, 29 years later, I was staring at a printed photo of their new golden child and reading a letter that somehow blamed me for hurting her while excusing everything that came before. Vera didn't apologize, not once. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't say sorry for what was said at the dinner or how I was treated. She didn't acknowledge that I was disrespected, erased, humiliated. Instead, she led with guilt, draped it in motherhood and memory. "This isn't love," I said out loud. I folded the letter in half, then in half again, then again, until it was a thick, tight square in my hand. "They don't miss me," I whispered. "They miss what I gave them." And maybe for the first time in my life, I didn't flinch when I said it. I stood up, slowly crossed the kitchen, and dropped the letter into the trash bin. I didn't hesitate. I didn't look back. Then I went to my laptop. The screen blinked to life, still logged into my email. I clicked compose and typed out one message. Short, clean, final. To the family group thread. Subject moving forward. I won't be attending any future family gatherings. Please remove me from any gift pools plans or shared accounts. I wish you peace. I just won't fund it anymore. Odeline. I hovered over the send button for only a second. Click. That was it. I closed the lid of my laptop, stood up, and walked to the window. The sun was beginning to dip. A golden line stretched across the floorboards, warm on my bare feet. I wasn't shaking anymore. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel proud. But I did feel done. Done begging to be included. Done chasing scraps of affection that always came with conditions. Done letting them define me by what they could take from me. I didn't even realize I'd started breathing slower until the silence settled so deep it felt like exhale. Later, I made a simple dinner. Grilled cheese tomato soup, the kind of comfort meal you make when you don't want to think too hard. By the time I slipped into bed, the apartment was dark, quiet, peaceful. I stared at the ceiling again this time, without blinking lights, and for once I didn't feel like I needed to replay anything. That night, I slept better than I had in months, until the knock came again at dawn. The knock at the door wasn't frantic like the others. It was steady, measured, as if whoever stood outside already knew I wouldn't answer right away. I pulled on a robe and cracked the door just enough to see my landlord's weathered face, half apologetic. "Morning, Miss Shipley," he said, holding up both hands like I might be armed. "Sorry to bug you this early, but just got off a strange call." I waited. He cleared his throat. "Your sister called, said you've been acting unstable, that maybe I should, I don't know, take a look at your lease, see if we could transfer it." He shook his head and chuckled awkwardly. "Didn't go anywhere, of course. Your paid-up, spotless record. Just thought you ought to know?" I nodded once. "Thanks for telling me." He tipped his cap and shuffled off. I closed the door gently behind me and stood there still as stone hand on the knob. "Unstable," I whispered. The word didn't sting. It felt familiar, like a song they'd hummed behind my back for years, and now decided to play out loud. After a quick shower and 2 sips of cold coffee, I walked straight to the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. It squeaked the way it always did. Inside was a worn manila folder with a red label, Mortgage Savannah Property. I sat on the living room floor, flipping through the paperwork. Pages and pages of bank approvals, title, transfers, repair receipts. 6 years ago, after my father's second heart scare, the house had been headed toward foreclosure. Callista begged. Vera sobbed. They couldn't lose the family home, they said. So I did what no one else could. I took out a loan. I bought it in my name, not out of pride, but to protect them. The deed was mine. The taxes, insurance, and major repairs mine too. And yet, not once had they referred to it as my house. It was always their home, her kitchen, Leora's room. I picked up my laptop. An hour later, a professionally formatted notice of termination of occupancy sat in my inbox ready to print. By noon, a courier in a navy blazer was pulling away from the curb with an envelope addressed to Vera Shipley and Callista Brandt, FO2. Oakwood Drive, Savannah, GA 30405. Inside, I'd included the following 3-color photographs of repairs I personally paid for a roof replacement, plumbing rework, and a new water heater. A list of unpaid utility bills stacked under my name, and a yellow post-it stuck to the top page handwritten, "Being family is not a lease agreement, and mine expired." After the door clicked behind the courier, I exhaled so hard it rattled my chest. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like clarity. Around 2:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with a school email reminder. "Dear Miss Shipley, this is a friendly nudge that Leora Brandt's tuition for the upcoming semester is due. Let us know if you need to update any payment methods." I stared at the screen for a long moment. They were still depending on me to play the ghost benefactor, still assuming I'd be too embarrassed, too dutiful to stop. I opened a fresh document, typed slowly, deliberately. "To whom it may concern, this message is to confirm withdrawal of tuition support for Leora Brandt effective immediately. Please direct all future communications to the listed legal guardians on file." Then, I wrote a second page, addressed it directly to the school guidance counselor. "This is a personal request. I ask that you keep an eye on Leora's emotional well-being. She is a smart, tender-hearted girl, but she's being used as a shield by adults unwilling to own their actions. Please support her however you can. Odeline Shipley." I printed both letters, slid them into a cream envelope, and made a quiet stop at the mailbox across the street before heading back inside. The air in my apartment felt lighter now, like something poisonous had been extracted. That evening, the phone stayed eerily quiet. No calls, no texts, no guilt-laced voicemails. But when I checked the family group chat, pure chaos. Callista had posted a screenshot of the eviction letter. "She's gone completely insane. She's evicting us." And Vera, ever the matriarch in denial, had replied, "She's bluffing. She wouldn't dare go through with it. Just ignore her." I didn't type a word. Didn't heart react, didn't even breathe too heavily. I just opened the drawer by the door, pulled out a Ziploc of silver keys, and stepped into the hallway. 10 minutes later, the locks on my house were changed. The old keys, the ones they all still held, were now useless. There would be no more letting themselves in, no more assuming I'd always stay quiet, no more mistaking my name on paper for their permanent permission. Because the truth was simple. No one bluffs when they've already packed the bags in their mind. By sunrise Tuesday, I wasn't just awake. I was alert. I'd slept through the first half of the storm, but now I was the eye of it. I started the morning with a checklist on the back of an old water bill. No poetry, no second-guessing, just bullet points that looked a lot like freedom. At the top, the car. Callista had been driving it for almost 2 years, telling everyone it was hers, even though the title sat in my name. I'd bought it when her credit was shot and her license suspended. She promised she'd pay me back once she got settled. The only thing she settled into was entitlement. I called the DMV at 8:05 a.m. sharp. A woman named Trina walked me through the process to revoke authorized use. 5 clicks and 1 password reset later, the car was legally out of her hands. Then I called a local repo service, gave them the plate, the VIN, and the address. "Pickup scheduled for Wednesday," the guy said. "You want us to call her first?" "No," I said, "let the silence be the notice." By lunchtime, my phone started singing. "Callista." Naturally, 6 missed calls before I even checked voicemail. Then came the audio, part sobbing, part venom. "You're punishing a child for what? For being loved. You always hated that I was the one with a family. I swear to God, Odie, I'll go public. I'll tell everyone you're unstable. You're mentally unfit. You think you can take my car, you're taking my life." I stared at the phone until it dimmed, then sent 1 text back, "Return the keys by Friday, or the tow truck gets them." I never heard her scream, but I imagined it. High-pitched, performative, just loud enough for someone else to overhear. Later that day, I pulled into the school parking lot, where Leora had been attending private classes for the last 3 years. A place with glossy halls, smiling teachers, and tuition that could make your chest tighten. They didn't know I was the one covering it all, not even Leora. The scholarship came from a fund I'd set up anonymously, routing payments through a family trust. It let her sit at the same table as kids with legacy surnames and summer homes on Tybee Island. But that silence, it had an expiration date, too. The administrator looked confused when I walked in. Miss Shipley, we didn't expect. I'm here to withdraw the scholarship, I said, placing a signed form on the desk. Effective immediately. She blinked. I see. Do you need us to notify the family? They'll figure it out, I said. Then I pulled out a second envelope. This is for the school counselor. Back in the car, I watched the sun dip low over the treetops while thinking about the words I'd written in that letter. Please consider this a confidential request. I ask you to keep a close eye on Leora. She's bright, thoughtful, but she's being pulled in directions no child should be. Her mother uses her to buffer pain she won't face, and she deserves better than that. Driving home, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still, like someone who'd stopped treading water, long enough to feel the ocean floor beneath their toes. By the time I changed into pajamas and curled onto the couch with tea, Callista had gone live on Instagram. Of course. Her eyes were red, but not from sadness, from performance. A humid mess of tears, shaky voice, and perfectly angled lighting. She's trying to ruin my life, she sniffled, staring straight into the camera. All because I have something she never will. Real love, a child, a home. She let the sentence hang like it was gospel. She's bitter, controlling. She's cutting off my daughter from the school she loves, from everything, because she can't stand not being the center of attention. Thousands of views, dozens of comments, hearts, shocked faces, praying hands. I watched in silence, not blinking once. When the video ended, I didn't pace, didn't cry, didn't scream. I opened my laptop, found the old clip. Leora, age 8, sitting on my couch in dinosaur pajamas. She was eating a slice of apple pie and telling the camera unprompted, "Deed, you're like my second mom. Mommy's always tired, but you always talk to me. You make me feel like I'm not invisible." I paused the video mid-sentence, her face frozen in that moment. Pure, unfiltered truth. I saved the file, renamed it, in case of smear campaign, stored it in an encrypted folder, 2 backups. Then, I made one last call that night to my property manager. I want all access revoked, I said. No family members, no guests. There was a pause. Even your mother, I didn't hesitate. Especially her. He exhaled slowly. Understood. If they show up, call the police, file trespass, and tell them this time there are consequences. I hung up and placed the phone face down. For the first time in my life, severance wasn't just a word. It was a decision. And this time, it came with receipts. I didn't need to check the blinds to know it had begun. The voices outside weren't casual chatter. They were calculated volume. The kind people use when they want to be heard. And sure enough, when I eased the curtain just 2 fingers wide, there they were. Vera in full Sunday best, even though it was Thursday, standing dead center in my front yard like she owned the zip code. Callista beside her, holding a phone on a gimbal, with a perfectly rehearsed frown, and some man mid-30s beard influencer assistant energy, angling a second phone toward the house. Across the street, Mrs. Keller sat on her porch swing, with her phone already up. She gave me a slow, knowing nod. So this is what they meant by escalation. I stepped away from the window and tied the sash on my robe. House slippers on hairback, calm. Not because I wasn't angry, but because I'd learned that anger gave them something to twist. Outside, Callista's voice rang out like it had been cued on a set. This is what emotional abuse looks like when your own sister locks you out of your childhood home. Vera chimed in, hands to her chest, tears already building. She's turned on her family. We raised her. I opened the door. The gimbal swung toward me instantly, as if I were a fugitive stepping out for one last plea. But I didn't flinch. Is this for your followers? I asked calmly. Make sure you get this too. I held up a thick folder and stepped onto the porch. Property deed, I said, flipping it open. In my name since 2017. Vehicle registration also mine. I looked straight into the main camera lens. You're filming a confrontation. I'm presenting documentation. Then I held up the last page. This is a notarized notice of termination of occupancy. You were served. You ignored it. Now you're trespassing. Callista scoffed, spinning toward her camera. This is what control looks like, folks. My sister thinks she can evict a single mom during a school year. You're not on the lease, I replied. Or the title, or the utilities, or the school bill. That last one struck. Her mouth twitched. She wasn't expecting me to say it out loud. Just then, our HOA president, Mr. Danning, came power-walking from the sidewalk, clipboard in hand. Ladies, he began, voice clipped, this is your third noise complaint in 2 weeks. Vera turned on him like a stage actor missing her cue. We're being harassed. This is a private family matter. He didn't blink. We've received 6 written complaints about public disturbances and harassment. Unless you're a listed resident, I have to ask you to leave. Callista snapped. She's kicking out her own family. Then, like someone had hit fast forward, she lunged right across the lawn toward me, screaming something about betrayal. Her voice shrill, her arms flailing just wide enough for drama, but too erratic for safety. Security, yes, we have a part-time patrol stepped in. One officer grabbed her elbow gently but firmly. Ma'am, step back now, Vera wailed. You've ruined us, Adeline. You've made us a spectacle. No, I said, lowering my voice. I just stopped fixing the things you kept breaking. Behind me, the neighbor across the street clapped. One slow, sarcastic applause. Another muttered, It's about time. The camera crew started to pull back. Callista's phone dropped with a thud. Her live stream ended mid-yell, the screen freezing on her distorted face. The officers walked them off my lawn. I didn't watch them go. I turned, stepped back inside, and pulled the door shut with the same quiet resolve I'd used to open it. No slamming, no speech, just stillness. I closed the blinds, set the folder back on the counter, and made a cup of tea. It wasn't celebratory. It was medicinal, like washing your hands after taking out the trash. That night, my phone buzzed once. Just once. A voicemail from Leora. I didn't press play immediately. I stood by the window, watching the shadows stretch across the driveway, like they didn't want to leave either. When I finally listened, her voice cracked through the speaker. I know you hate me now, but I didn't mean it. I was just repeating what they said. Silence, then softer. I miss you. I don't know how to say that to them. I sat down, listened to it again, not because I needed clarity, but because part of me still wanted to believe someone in that house ever meant what they said with kindness. After the second listen, I tapped delete. That was the thing about boundaries. Sometimes they don't start with shutting others out. Sometimes they begin with shutting down the echo of words that were never yours to carry. The next morning, the black backpack was sitting on my porch, not tossed, not slashed, or stomped, just placed as if whoever returned it thought that made it gentle. It was soaked. Savannah rain had poured overnight, heavy, loud, the kind that floods gutters and turns sidewalks to slick mirrors. And now the bag sagged from the weight of it, its zipper half open, like a mouth too tired to close. I stood in the doorway for a long minute, barefoot on the tile, before I stepped out to bring it in. I didn't rush. I didn't curse. I simply lifted it as I'd done 100 times before, when it was filled with textbooks, grant applications, or groceries I carried upstairs to Callista's place. I laid it on a towel by the kitchen sink and unzipped it fully. The inside was surprisingly intact. Wet, yes, but not destroyed. And still right there, in the inner mesh pocket, zipped closed, was the USB drive. Not a note, not a single scribbled word on a scrap of paper, just silence and soaked seams. Beneath the drive, folded and still oddly dry, was the receipt from Leora's iPhone. I turned it over. Nothing written on the back. I sat down at my kitchen counter, plugged in the USB, and waited. The screen lit up with the file. One single video. It was dated 5 years ago. Leora had been 8 then. She had that missing front tooth and frizzy curls that wouldn't lay flat no matter how Vera brushed them. In the video, she was sitting cross-legged on my couch, hugging a teddy bear I'd stitched the eye back on. "Deed," she said, using the name she made up for me. "You always remember what I like. Mommy forgets, but you don't even when I whisper it once." She giggled. "You listen. You always listen." The screen froze as I paused the video. I couldn't keep watching. That voice, it wasn't weaponized yet. It hadn't been taught to parrot cruelty or sarcasm. It was the voice of a child who trusted I'd show up. And then, my mind uninvited, replayed her laughter from the other night. The one that followed Mom and Grandma said, "If you disappeared, no one would even care." I closed my eyes. "They never watched this," I whispered. "They never wanted to." The rain had stopped outside. The sun was beginning to burn through the haze, casting a quiet gold on the kitchen floor. It was too early to feel final, but I did. Like something had sealed itself shut without me realizing it until now. That was when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Dad. He didn't start with anger, just fatigue, that low, practiced disappointment. "We didn't mean for it to get this far," he said. "Can we talk?" I waited. Let the silence drag just enough for him to feel it. Then I said, "You only want to talk because the lights are off and the fridge is empty." He cleared his throat. "You've made your point. Now be the bigger person." That word, bigger. I let the ache settle for half a second, then replied, "Being the bigger person doesn't mean being your backup plan." He didn't say anything, so I continued, "You raised a daughter who paid for everything and another who spent it all, and now neither of you gets to choose which one I am." He tried again, softer this time. "I know you think we've failed you." "I know you did," I said. Then I ended the call. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat there, phone in hand, then reached for the yellow envelope I'd prepped weeks earlier, the one I hoped I'd never need. Inside it, I placed 3 things: a copy of the property deed with my name alone, a breakdown of expenses since 2016, mortgage payments, utility bills, tuition checks, car repairs, and one final letter, handwritten, "This is the last thing you'll ever receive," with my name on it. I mailed it to Callista's apartment that afternoon. She'd open it, she'd read it. She'd roll her eyes maybe, or curse, or cry. But that wasn't the point. It wasn't for her reaction. It was for my release. That evening, I unzipped the backpack once more, emptied it entirely. It still smelled faintly of peppermint gum and worn fabric, the scent of library nights, and unpaid overtime. I washed it gently in the sink, let it dry on the balcony rail. Later, I folded it neatly, carefully, and placed it on the top shelf of my closet, empty now but clean. Weeks passed, not one knock, not one text, just quiet. Then, on a slow Thursday morning, as I stirred honey into my tea, my inbox pinged. The subject line stood out against the clutter, like a bruise on clean skin. I didn't know what I was saying. It was from Leora. I clicked before I could talk myself out of it. There weren't many words, just a few sentences. Awkward, uneven, but untouched by her mother's tone. "They told me you hated us. But I remember things. I remember when I had the flu and you sat on the floor next to my bed all night. I remember when you brought lunch to school because Mom forgot. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry." There was no ask, no hint of manipulation, just something that sounded like the girl I used to braid hair for on school picture days. I sat for a long moment, the steam from my mug rising like a breath I hadn't fully let out in years. Then I stood up, walked to my closet, and pulled out the drawer that held more than receipts. It held the years no one else had counted. There, tucked behind the file of unpaid reimbursements, was the receipt from the iPhone, still crisp, still folded. On the back, I had written almost out of instinct, "That night, bought in full, paid in silence." I stared at the words for a moment, ran my thumb across the faded ink, then tucked the paper into a small white envelope. No return address, no letter, just the receipt. I walked down to the post office on Bull Street. It was just after 9:00 a.m. The air smelled like warm pavement and old envelopes. I slipped the envelope into the outbound tray and turned back home without waiting for the clerk to ask, "Need a stamp?" The walk back was slow, deliberate. I passed the bakery that used to put Leora's name on cakes. I paused by the shop window, but didn't go in. I didn't need anything sweet. 2 blocks later, I passed the little boutique where I'd once bought Vera a scarf she never wore. Too loud, she said. It had been the exact shade of her church hat. Now the display was full of spring linens and cheerful signs that said "Grateful." I walked on. As I moved through the familiar turns and corners, I didn't flinch anymore. The memories were still there, but the ache was gone, just echoes now. I was never invisible. I whispered to no one in particular. I was just silent, and that silence was strength. It didn't feel bitter, it felt like truth. By the time I got home, the sun had climbed just high enough to warm the porch tiles. I brewed another cup of tea, the same brand Vera used to call too fancy. I added lemon this time. Small rebellions are still rebellions. I checked social media out of habit. Callista's page had been quiet for 2 weeks. No motherhood tips, no skin serum deals, a handful of unfollows. One comment left on her last live. Didn't age well, huh? I didn't reply. I never had to. Vera never called again. And the house, it was listed under foreclosure. They hadn't paid the property taxes since I pulled my name off the account. The realtor's photo made it look smaller than I remembered. That night, I opened my closet. The black backpack was right where I'd left it, clean zipped and still. I smiled. I closed the door softly and whispered to myself, "You don't always get justice, but sometimes silence is justice." Have you ever been erased by the very people you kept afloat? Have you ever walked away, not because you were weak, but because you were finally free? If so, this story might have been yours too.